Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Yerushalmi Megillah Daf Lamed Gimel. So we're holding at the second set of two dots. It's about what's this, like 10, 12 lines down. Is Tani Tani Paseh V'Roy V'Goyel Mavarich. Person gets an aliyah, he opens up the Torah, takes a look inside, Goyel, and he closes the Sefer Torah Mavarich, and then he makes the bracha. Is Tani Tani no Paseh V'Roy Mavarich. You open it up, you keep it open, Mavarich make the bracha, and as we know, there's different minhagim regarding this. Okay, Rav Zura Abba Bar Yirmiyah Rab Masna B'Shem Shmuel Alach Mishu Oime Paseh V'Roy Mavarich. That Allah is you don't have to close the Sefer Torah and then make the bracha. You can keep it open. Mad timer. Where do we see this from? So it says by Ezra B'Pischai Amdu Kol Maxi Basrei. Immediately it says Vayivorech Ezra Hashem Elokim Hagoda. So we see that Ezra right away went from opening the Torah to making the bracha. He didn't close it. But Megillah, what did he make him great with? Says he made Hashem great. Kaviyachol had to make him great. So of course, who else would say such a memra other than Rav Gidol? Who else can say that? Rav Gidol Amar B'Shem HaMeforish. He said Hashem's name the way it's written. Hashem Havai. Rav Masna Amar B'Bracha Gidloi. That he made the bracha for the Torah. That's the God of Hashem is when you make a bracha on the Torah. Sim Shem Rabbi Shua ben Levi Lama Nikru Anshe Knesses Hagdoila. Why are they called the Anshe Knesses Hagidoila? Shechzivus Hagidoila Liyoshna. And what is this? Amar Pinchas. Moshe, his skin, Moshe originally matbeir shel he was misakin in Nusach the bracha, and he said, "Okay, lagoda lagiba ve'anoira." Yirmiyah mar hakel hagodel hagiba. V'lo yom anoira. V'lama. Why didn't he say anoira? V'lomo giba. Lezen no likos giba v'shu roya churban beis v'shoisek. He sees that the base Mikdash was destroyed, and for this, Vegan Hashem goes and he doesn't do anything. That's Gibeon, was his kovish, his will. Why didn't he say, why did he leave out Noira? Ain't Noira Ela Beis HaMikdash, the Ksiv Noira Lekim Mikdash Echa. And the base of Mikdash at that time was destroyed. Daniel Amar Kela Galva Noira, V'lam Giba. Why didn't he say Giba? Bana Masurin Bikolorin. Eichan Hu Gvurasai, Eichan Gvurasai. Right, his children are in jail, in Golis, they're in jail. Where's Hashem's Gvura? So why did he say no to Taka? When Daniel was saved from the Kibbush Eish, that was considered to be noticed, therefore he said no. So the Anshe Knesset came back and were re-miyased what Moshe had done originally. V'ata lekenu, where you see someone says V'ata lekenu akel hagoda lagiva v'yanoiro shoyme abris v'achesed ayimad lefonecha. So there you go. So they put back the lashonis of um, they put back the lashonis of of Moshe Rabbeinu. Ubasa v'dam yesh bekoich v'ektim ana basa v'dam yesh bekoich litin kitzvah b'dvarim halo. How can any basa v'dam come? How can a human come to comprehend the shvachim and Kadosh Baruch Hu say this, not that? Amrit Barleza Yoid Nehin and Avim Sheloyin Amiti. Ve'en Machnifim Loy. The Nevi'im understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the meat of emes, and they know what's considered to be Chanifa and what's not. So they were misakin. This is not Chanifa, right? And other things are. That's why you have the story in the Bavli where the guy got up. I forget who was in front of him. He said he kept going on, and I forget who it was that went over to him and said, "Siyamta shvach demar." He finished, right? With this, in other words, what we were misakin. This is what we can do. Okay, hadron loch perknei ira, hadron loch perknei ira, hadron loch perknei ira, mazel tov. Fangt on the heilige geferte perek, hakos Megillah Oim Neviyosha. A person can read the Megillah, I'm going to ask what's hakos mashma b'diavad, either standing or sitting. Kore echad korushnaim yatza, even though normally say in Trey Kodem Mishtami over Ibn Megillah, since people they want to hit a Megillah, even two people reading it together, you can be Yaitza. This is talking about the bracha afterwards. That's totally in the middle, the bracha before you have to make. Right? So Monday, Thursday, Shabbos by Mincha, you have three aliyahs, you can have less. Can't have more. There's no navis. We know this is what we mentioned yesterday. That in those days, in the Mishnah, in the times of the Tanoim, the first aliyah and the last aliyah made a bracha. Everybody else in the middle did not make a bracha. So the Gemara, Frag mal normal Shava, Hakar is mashma Shava, like Hakatchila loy, but how can that be? What Tanu Maisa Breb Meir, seems to Meir, Shekar Miyosha, the Beis HaKnesses, Shel Tivin, and he read the Megillah sitting in the great synagogue of Tivin, or Tavon, the Nosnal Acho Biruchala, and somebody else actually made the bracha. So I can mistake the mutter likroisa, I'm in the mutter likroisa means even like at it's not a problem. Freit you understand man, nice lach, mavarach Ze koire v'ze mevarich. Well, how can it be? Rabbi is reading it, the other guy makes the bracha. Rabbi Shem Rabbi Yirmiyah mekancha shemei koire that shemeya is kikar. So if you hear the bracha, it's as if you yourself made the bracha. And where do we see this from? Ksiv. It says by Yoshiyahu HaMelech, Asher kar l'fnei Melech Yehuda, l'fnei Melech Yehuda, lo shafen karya. But it was made like the king read it. Because the king heard it from Shafan. That's as if he read it himself. Do you have to stand up in front of a Sefer Torah? You get up for a Ben Torah, right? The Talmud Chacham, the Koshkem, Pnei Torah Atzma, certainly have to get up for the Torah itself. The fact that we get up to read in the Torah, why does the person getting Aliyah have to stand? Pnei Kvoid does, or else covered a Torah. Pnei Kvoid Rab, is it because of a covered Rab doesn't pass, for covered a tzibah for somebody to be sitting? In Tem Kvoid, I feel bein elevei no. If you can tell me that the reason is as to cover a Torah, then anytime a person's learning, should have to stand. In Tem Pnei Kvoid Rabim, now there's a changing gear, so then bein elevei natzmoi loy, then by himself you wouldn't have to. Now, the Gemara says, "Mipnei kvoido hu oimid." Actually, how exactly in this line, but I did is all the same. Is this a question? Answer? Is this an answer? What we were saying before? Well, that was a question. I think this is the straightest way. If you need to nobody. Mipnei kvoido hu oimid. In other words, really, he stands for the covet of the Torah. But if you're going to force a guy to stand every time he learns, remember that Cain, I gotta stand up to learn now. Guys are going to want us, therefore, fine, we like to sit and learn. He went to shul. He's a guy called Metargim Samach Lamuda. He's learning from Torah. He's leaning over on a stender. Amalei Aslacha. Not allowed to do the Kneshet Nitna Be'em of a Yira, the same was given by a Sina Be'em of a Yira, Kachon Tzichin Lina Be'em of a Yira. Leaning on a stender is not Be'em of a Yira. Reb Chagi Amar Reb Shmuel Rav Yitzchak all the Knishta Chamei so Chazana he sees the Balkoire Kom Etargim V'loi Mekin Barnosh Tachtoi. He sees that the one who is actually there used to be a minig, and I think the Taimanim still have this minig that the Metargim when they do the Balkoire when they read the Torah and Shabbos, also Metargim. So here the Baal Kair himself was the Metargim. He didn't have somebody else doing it. Amalei, no. Silucha, you're not allowed to do it. The same was given through a broker. Moshe Rabbeinu was an agent. Kachon Tzrichim Linug Ba Aidei Sirso. Oh, Rabbi Bahazi of the Shela. He actually asked it. Do you have to He asked it as a question. Rabbi Bahazi. He asked. Does a person who is reading the Torah, can he himself say the Targum, or does he have to have somebody else say the Targum? And he answered, Ben Hashem we see in Devarim, Moshe was telling that I was there as a sirsa, I was a broker. So therefore you also have to have a broker when you are laning the Torah, and one person lanes, and he's the Balkar, and the other person says the Targum. Reb Chaga Shmuel of Yitzchak all the Knishta, he went to Shul. Chamachat Soifa, Moshe Tagum and Sefer, he's reading the Targum from Chumash. Amalei Asilacha. You're not allowed to do that. Dvarim Shnevu B'Peh, B'Peh. Targum is given B'Peh. It has to be done B'Peh. Or Dvarim Shnevu B'Ksav. Though that has to be done B'Ksav from the Sefer. Reb Chaga b'Shem Rashum Banachman them with Dvarim B'Peh and Dvarim B'Ksav. Beinu Yodim Eizman Chaviv. And what's more beloved? The Torah B'Ksav, Torah B'Peh. Elam Imad Ksiv. Ki Al Pi Advarim Ha'elu Karati Yitcha Bris V'Es Yisrael. It says Al Pi, right? Key word here. So it means Balpeh. Adamra Oisim Shevapeh Chavim. Balpeh is more Chaviv. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon, that you require actually both. Chadama Im Shimarta Mashevapeh v'Shimarta Masheviksav and Ikosit Chabris. Otherwise, in love, in Ikosit Chabris. So you need both Torah Biksav and Torah Balpeh. The Chorona, the other one says, Mishamat Mashav Pev, Mishamat Mashav Iksav, at Noitel Schar, and Lav ain't at Noitel Schar. He dashed more on the Schar aspect of it. In other words, if you don't do both, you're not getting Schar. Amr Bishub and Levi Aleim, Ve'aleim, so dashing, if you look at the Pasuk says, Va'itn Hashem Elai, as Shnei Luchas Avonu, Ksuvim Be'etzpe Elohim, Ve'aleihem, Kichol, Hadvarim, and we're going to dash in those things. So we're going to dash and could have said Aleim, it says Valaim, and so it said Kol, and says Kichol. Could have said Dvarim and says it's Hadvarim. What does that apply? That applies Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud, Agadah. Obviously, that's four. So the Carbonata says Mikra is not learned from this. Mikra is Pashat. That's the pasuk. It's Mishnah, Talmud, Agadah. That's what's learned from this, from these three riboim. Any chiddush that you can possibly think of, even thousands of years in the future, that was already said in Har Sinai. Hadod Ksiv, this is what we see. Yesh davar sheyomer re'ezeh chadashu, right? It's a pasuk in Keheles, right? A guy tells you, hey, that's a chiddush. Never heard that before. But his friend tells him, no, no, no. That's the rest of that same pasuk from Keheles. It was already there. It was already pre-existing. So in other words, every possible pshat and Torah, anything that somebody's can be mechadish, was already said at Har Sinai. Called.